I want to show you how I make a homemade pill treat using very basic ingredients. This one is going to be a peanut butter one. I started making, this was the very first recipe that I started using when I stopped buying the prepackaged made pill treats in the stores, and you can buy them at your vet office as well. Just a little background, my dog Ruby has epilepsy and she was diagnosed about three and a half years ago. And for about the first year, I was using those prepackaged pill treats. Everyone who's watching this knows which ones I'm talking about, that come in the green package. And as I started getting into her journey and learning more, as I learned with Ruby about what worked for her and what was going to be best for her, I remember one day looking at that back of the package and just thinking, what am I giving her? And just being a little bit concerned about the ingredients that are being used in those. Now, she really liked them. And so I then wanted to recreate them using good nutritious ingredients that I knew would be good for her, and it would be a lot better for my pocketbook. So I'm going to show you that today. This is kind of my standard go-to recipe that I use quite often with her. She loves them. So if you have a dog that has to take medication just temporarily, or if you have a dog like mine that's going to be on medication for the rest of their life, this is a great one to learn how to make. I've made it so many times that I just put the ingredients in. I don't measure things out anymore, but for the purpose of this video, I did write down the exact measurements to get them so they're going to be the consistency that you want them to be. But it's definitely something you can play around with. So once you get used to it, you can adjust the amounts to make just the amount that you need. Maybe my dog takes pills twice a day, and sometimes some additional supplements or probiotics that requires me to make a little bit more. And so I'll adjust the recipe that way. They stay in the refrigerator very nicely. You do have to refrigerate them. They can't just stay out on the counter because they don't have any preservatives in them, because they're homemade and they're healthier. So I am gonna get into it, and just know that you can get creative. So this was me just playing around with it. I searched the internet, I found different recipes, and then I made the ones that I liked. And I have a bunch of different varieties that I'm gonna be sharing with you. Ultimately, I've been working on a book to get them all into one place for anyone who would wanna have access to that. That's in process, so I'm hoping that very soon I will be able to link that below. But for right now, my goal is to share what I know, what I've learned. I'm not an expert. I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not a dog nutritionist. I am a home owner. I am a dog owner of a dog that happens to have epilepsy. And so there has been a huge learning curve for me over the last couple of years as I figure things out. But I feel like I have figured a lot of things out, at least that work for my dog. So my goal is to share that information as much as possible. So let's get into it, and I can show you how I make the homemade peanut butter pill treat. So I use, for this particular one, I often use oat flour for Ruby's pill treats. So let me just shift this down here. So for this, and I will put these ingredients in the description below, but I'm gonna do 3 tablespoons of oat flour. This one happens to be a gluten-free one. 3 tablespoons of that. I am then going to use 1 tablespoon of a beef gelatin. So you want to make sure that it is a beef gelatin, or I should say collagen. You don't want to use anything that would be used like a gelatin for a desserts, like a Jello or anything like that. Then I'm gonna use 3 tablespoons of peanut butter. For this one, I am using creamy peanut butter. If you have a dog that is very savvy about finding the pill, one thing you can try is actually use crunchy peanut butter. So by having the nuts, the peanuts and the crunchy peanut butter, it's just harder for them to work and try to eat around the pill. The pill really gets camouflaged in there. That's not an issue that I have with Ruby. She's just happy to have the treat, so she will snarf it down. I don't have to try to hide it that much. And then the last ingredient is going to be, whoops, sorry about that. The last ingredient is gonna be, I'm gonna use a 1.5 tablespoons of chicken broth. So put that in. You can see I'm not super, this isn't baking. There's no oven or cooking involved here. This is just putting these ingredients together and mixing. So if you accidentally add a little bit too much liquid, then go ahead and add in a little bit more of the flour. If you add too much flour and it's too dry, then go ahead and add in a little bit more of the liquid. So you're really gonna just stir this together now. You're creating a dough. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. Really, this couldn't be easier, and you can't go wrong with it. Plus, having the ingredients that I bought here, this is gonna let me make batch after batch after batch, which means I am just saving so much money on top of it. I remember buying those pre-made store-bought pill treats, and just the expense of them alone, on top of just not sure about how healthy they were. So what I usually do towards the end is I just pick it up with my hands and I start to knead it. So I knead it together like this. I just want to make sure, as you can see, I'm kind of creating a dough ball. And so I just knead it together. Make sure I get all this good yummy ingredients, knead it together. And all I'm doing here is I'm really just mixing all of the ingredients together, just so I know everything. She's not gonna get a big chunk of flour or a big chunk of gelatin. It all mixes together very, very nicely. So ultimately, this is what I end up with, just this dough ball. Now, you have a couple different options here. I'm gonna show you what I typically do, but if you wanted to, you literally could just take this dough ball and put it in an airtight container and keep it like this in your refrigerator. Then you would just be going in and pulling off what you need to then give them the pill. So that's one option. I have done that before when I've been in a big hurry and I just don't have time to make them. But typically what I do is I will pull off, and again, this isn't exact, but Ruby takes tablets. So what I do is I just pull off a pinch, I roll it between my hands into like this little ball. And then what I do is I just push my finger in it and I kind of form my fingers around it to create the dent where then the pill goes. And as you can see, this looks very similar to what you would buy in the store. So when it came time to giving Ruby her pill, you put the pill in, and then you can just close up the pocket and kind of form the treat right around it. It works really, really nicely. So I would go through and I would be creating these. I pre-make them if I have time, just because it makes it a lot easier when it comes time to give them medication, especially if your dog receives medication early in the morning like mine does. Ruby gets her first dose at 6 a.m. So I keep going through. One thing you can do is, if you want to, you can make the dough ball ahead of time. If you want to make a couple different batches, you can freeze it, and it should stay in your freezer if you wrap it up nicely and in an airtight container for about 3 months. You would just want to make sure that you take it out and defrost it. You can also freeze it pre-made or pre-shaped, I should say. So that's what I would do, is I would go through and just continue to make them and then form them into the shapes that allow me to slip in the pill and go from there. Obviously, you can adjust the size of yours based on the pill size that your dog uses, but it's very, very simple. So there you go. If you want to save some money, if you want to give your dog a more nutrient dense treat that allows you to give them their medication very, very easily, this is a great way to do it. I have a number of these different recipes for the homemade pill treats that I'm going to be sharing on my channel, so please check back. I'm going to try to do, along with the tip videos, I'm going to try to do more of the different ideas of what you can use at home, and often you may have those ingredients right in your refrigerator or your cupboard. So thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you again soon.